All right, this is the second to last video in our series on things I learned from recovering from a bunch of mental illnesses and then taking care of my brain for more than a decade now. And I want to talk about the question that comes up a lot about, hey, if I work on recovery, am I going to get certainty back about the stuff in my head? Am I going to have clarity again about what's going on inside my head and around me? The thing is, that itself is the standard compulsion pattern. You're trying to get a clean feeling in your mind, and we know, just like if you were trying to get a clean feeling on your hand, the more you scrub and scrape and burn until your hands are peeling, you're only going to feel more contaminated. The same thing happens when we're chasing clarity and certainty in our heads. We're only going to feel more uncertain. This brings up a think important topic that on the recovery journey, if you're going to be working on recovery and beyond, you're going to want to talk about, think about, be aware of. The thing is, I have never had a trigger warning on any of my videos, but on this one, I am going to say the stuff we're going to talk about here, about how the brain can skew reality, how our perceptions are often wrong, may send some people for a loop because your brain's wrong. To start exploring this, let's talk about dragons. So in particular, one dragon. So there's this temple here in Kyoto called Myoshinji. So actually it's a big temple complex. And in one of the main buildings, there's a dragon painted on the roof. And actually I was visiting Myoshinji and I saw the dragon advertised. I saw some photos around, and you pay extra money to get into the part with the dragon. And at first I was thinking, who cares? It's a dragon on a roof. The thing is, in Kyoto, there's a lot of dragons on ceilings, and yeah, they're amazing, they're beautiful, but you get kind of accustomed to seeing, many hundred-year-old amazing dragons painted on the ceilings of temples. So I was like, I don't need to see it. The thing is, though, it's amazing to be in Japan again, because the last time I was in Japan was big mental illness practice time. So I've been very aware on this trip to Japan that I can do things differently, that I can handle my brain in a different way. So I noticed that kind of just reaction, like, who cares about the dragon? I don't need to go and, see whatever. But I had time to. There's no reason not to. I didn't need to be in a rush. So I took my brain to go and see the dragon. And you know what? It was an amazing dragon. You walk in the hall and actually it's enormous. When you take a picture of this dragon and you put it on a pamphlet, it does not capture at all how amazing it is, because the building that it's in is very large and the dragon covers the entire ceiling, and there's something about the way the dragon is painted that gives it depth. So when you're sitting there meditating, especially if you're meditating with your eyes kind of not totally closed, you can often see parts of the dragon above you because it's that enormous and the room is that large, and there's this feeling of depth and this sense that there is a dragon swirling over top of you. So of course my brain was wrong about the dragon. The dragon was really amazing, and I enjoyed sitting there beneath it, and I spent some time there, and then I was like, okay, that was a great experience. I was getting ready to go. And as I get up and I'm making my way out, there was a security guard there, because one of the things, you can't take photos of it, and there's a bunch of other things you can't do in the hall. And so there was a security guard there, just kind of watching everybody. And as I was getting up to go, the security guard stops me. And he points up, we're on this side of the hall, he points up at the dragon, and he says that the dragon is facing east. That side of the hall is east. I look at it and I was like, yeah, like the dragon's like clearly facing this direction. And he's like, that's east. And I was thinking he was going to tell me how like bad spirits come from the northeast, which is something you do hear a lot in Kyoto. There's a whole bunch of temples built on the northeast to kind of protect the city. And so again, I was assuming something, and I assumed that's what he was going to say. But then he says, if you go to the other side of the hall, look up again, that's the west side. And if you go to the other side of the hall, the dragon will be facing west. And so I was looking at it, the dragon is clearly, its head's the size of me. This dragon is massive. It's not like it's far away and I'm like, ooh, I think it's facing east. No, it's very, very clearly facing east. I was like, okay, I'll go to the other side of the hall. So I walked back around to the entrance and come out on the west side of the hall, which I'd already walked on, but I hadn't looked up at the dragon at the time. And then I'm standing on the west side of the hall, straight across from where I was on the east side of the hall. And I look up at the dragon, again, very large dragon head, very clearly facing west. And not subtly, the dragon, if you were standing on the west side of the hall and somebody asked you which side of the hall does the dragon face, you would very confidently, with no doubt in your mind, say the west side. So what's the significance of this? Well, the dragon, besides being an amazingly skillful piece of craft, is a visual koan. If you ask a person on the west side, which way does the dragon face? They would say west. If you ask a person on the east side, which way does the dragon face? They would say east. They would both feel absolutely certain. They would both feel rational and logical. They're both wrong. See, our brains love fitting the world into tiny boxes. That applies as much to the world around us as inside of us. Our superpowered label makers in our skull are just constantly judging and labeling our experiences, right and wrong, good and bad. Constantly labeling and judging ourselves. We're often wrong about that. Those judgments, those labels. And sometimes we've taught our brain those wrong labels. Sometimes we've learned them. Sometimes we've been forced into them. This is important though for understanding how we end up struggling with our mental health, but also as we're navigating mental health skills exercises to cut out compulsions and to learn how to interact differently with experiences. That maybe seems a bit vague, saying the brain is wrong and it judges things and they're wrong. Let's make this a little more tangible. So when I was struggling with my brain, I had all sorts of compulsions around paranoia. I was completely convinced I was being watched by people, especially inside of my apartment, and I did all sorts of compulsions based around these kind of angles and who was watching and where I thought they were watching from. And I didn't see it as a problem. I felt it completely that I was being watched. I knew I was being watched. I didn't even see it as part of the mental health issues, didn't bring it up in therapy, etc. When I realized, oh, I do all of these compulsions around this very certain belief that I'm being watched, I started to explore cutting them out. And cutting out those compulsions involved doing two things. So one, kind of classic, ERP ACT exercise. I was gonna feel like I was being watched, be like, all right, I'm being watched and I'm not going to do this action, this compulsion to control the fact that I'm being watched. And of course then my brain's like, but then your bad things are going to happen to you because you're being watched and so on. So going like, okay, I guess these bad things are going to happen. That's an example of really interacting with that feeling, right? I judge that feeling as real. I was really interacting with that fear. Be like, yeah, this thing, it's gonna happen, okay. At the same time, it also helped to start exploring the fact that I was just wrong. That feeling, that absolute certainty of danger and of being watched in that moment was also just a complete false fabrication. Exploring that wasn't about reassuring myself. It's not reassurance to recognize reality. Both exercises were very useful. Both pushing on the fear, because that was a thing I was afraid of. I was trying to protect myself. I was trying to avoid things I didn't want to experience. Completely understandable. That was a fear that I needed to work on. Also, interacting with any of that stuff at all was wrapped up in compulsions. Like me judging that feeling as meaning I was being watched and meaning I was in danger was also a compulsion. So I also needed to cut out that and sit with that feeling and actually start to see, well, maybe I was completely wrong about that feeling. Maybe that drive to categorize that feeling, label it, attach meaning to it, and then take action based on it, maybe I didn't have to do any of that. Derealization, depersonalization, all that derpy goodness is another area we can really see this well, because the entire game of judging reality or judging something as not feeling real, it's all part of the same compulsion. There is no feeling to reality. Reality just is. But then we get in there with our judgment superpowers and we start judging things as being right, feeling real, which naturally means that there must be things that don't feel right and real. And so then the brain is going to go into protection mode. It's going to be constantly checking, be like, does this feel real? Does that feel right? And then of course it won't. And then we try to fix it to get that real feeling. And then we're going to have more of that feeling of things being unreal. We don't have to play with any of that. If we judge something as feeling super real and good, we can see that and be like, that's nice, brain. That's nice you judge it that way. But I know reality is not that feeling right now. If it judges it as feeling really disconnected and not feeling real, we can also thank it and congratulate it for just trying to do its job. But we also know that's not reality either. That's just a feeling we're having right now. So 3 things I learned from this. So first of all, the presence or absence of thoughts and feelings, not a useful indicator of where mental health is at or how you're progressing with recovery and just building mental health skills. Becomes so important to track progress with mental health or to understand where our mental health is at by using tangible, real indicators, and especially things we want to keep in our lives. Tracking things we actually want to grow and build rather than something we want to get rid of and need to constantly check and judge. Okay? The second thing, it helps so much to be open to completely relearning emotions from scratch. I think sometimes people arrive at that recognition anyway, as they're working on skills, as they're interacting differently with their brain, they realize, oh, I have problems feeling emotions that are positive, I have problems feeling emotions that are negative, I just stick them all in these categories that are very limiting. What if there's more to emotions? What if there are emotions we haven't allowed ourselves to experience? What if we're wrong about how we've interpreted a lot of emotions, feelings, physical sensations as well? You can take feelings in a very broad sense. What if it was okay to be open to completely relearning feelings from scratch? And the last thing to keep in mind and to use as a support on your adventures, especially if you're stepping into relearning emotions, are values. A clear set of values based around actions, not around, oh, I value a particular feeling, like I value feeling clean and certain. Those aren't values. Values are things we want to give to the world, things we want to create and build. Using actions can help us take steps forward. Sometimes we might just value trying something new, and that's okay. Trying new things gives us the opportunity to experience emotions, experience uncertainty, experience physical sensations, and explore interpreting them differently. But it's going to be that set of values, articulating a set of actions, and they're going to change, but a set of actions can really become your signposts, asking, am I doing those actions? Am I giving the things I want to give to the world, rather than constantly checking and judging the brain's perceptions of reality, of yourself. And yeah, it can be kind of frightening to throw out the thing we've been using a lot often to interpret the world. Yeah, the world is a pretty wild place, but enjoy exploring it. Enjoy getting to know the world and getting to know yourself beyond all of those labels that the brain loves to stick on everything.